will reading. The only sound sharper than the lawyer's voice was the soft, practiced laughter of my parents. It slid across the long table like a blade, clean and cold, cutting before I even knew I had been wounded. The entire content of the video is a fictional work created by the writing team of the Revenge Amber channel, intended to reflect common conflicts in families and society, helping viewers recognize their emotions and choose a more positive way of living. I sat straight, hands clasped in my lap, pretending the winter light on the polished wood did not sting my eyes. The lawyer, Mr. Dalton, cleared his throat and lifted another document. "Serena Crane," he announced. "Your grandfather leaves you a trust valued at approximately $950,000 and continued access to the Crane Foundation's mentorship programs." Serena exhaled as though relieved she had finally received what she believed she was owed. She did not look at me. She never needed to. My parents beamed as if her name alone justified the oxygen in the room. Then a single crisp paper slid across the table toward me. $1, folded neatly, intentionally, humiliation in perfect symmetry. My father, Jonathan, did not blink. "Value is earned. Isolde," he said. "Your sister put in the work." My mother, Lucille, smiled without warmth. Some children rise. Some simply steady the room. Their words felt practiced, like lines they had repeated for years until the script became truth. I kept my eyes on the dollar as if looking away meant accepting something I was not ready to absorb. Mr. Dalton hesitated, then produced a small sealed envelope and a brass key. "These were left specifically for Isolde Crane," he said. His tone softened in a way that made my mother's smile twitch. My fingers closed around them. The envelope surprisingly heavy for something so small. Serena leaned forward, her voice light. "I am sure Grandpa meant it symbolically. Symbolic. As if the erasure of a daughter could be wrapped neatly in metaphor." Jonathan clasped his hands. "Your sister will continue Arthur's legacy. You should consider building your own." There it was a dismissal disguised as encouragement. A lifetime of being told to stay small, to stay out of the frame, compressed into one patronizing sentence. I felt the shift inside me, subtle but undeniable. Something long buried straightened its spine. "Mr. Dalton glanced my way. "Isolde, you may want to read the letter in private." My mother cut him off. "There is no need for theatrics." But the lawyer did not retract his words. And for the first time in that room, someone's gaze landed on me without sliding past. I slipped the envelope into my coat pocket. The brass key tapped lightly against the lining, a sound no one else noticed. As I stood, preparing to leave the table, the air felt tighter, almost expectant. "If this story reaches you," I said quietly, "stay with me." My voice did not shake. Sometimes the smallest truths reshape everything we thought we understood. And if any part of what I say reflects your own life, let me know where you are listening from. Stories travel farther when we carry them together. No one in my family moved. Their stillness was the clearest confession they had ever made. I turned away before the silence could settle into me again. The dollar, the key, the envelope, they were all I carried out of the room. Yet somehow, it felt like more than anything they had ever given me. I left the will reading with the envelope still warm in my pocket, its weight following me like a memory I had tried to outgrow. But memories travel fast, faster than truth, faster than breath. And as I stepped into the hallway, another one rose up before I could push it down. Serena was 8 when she won her first regional piano prize. Our mother polished that trophy for weeks, holding it up to the light as if it were proof she had birthed brilliance. I still remember how she spoke to Serena that night. "You are destined, sweetheart," she whispered, kissing her forehead. "Some people are simply chosen." Then her eyes drifted to me. The shift was small, practiced. "Isolde, Bring the coats for the guests. Will you? I carried them silently, stacking wool and perfume in the back room while music and praise filled the house without me. Years later, the pattern had not changed. It had only learned to speak more fluently. I remember standing in the living room while my mother arranged Serena's debate medals, gold, glass, engraved plates, each one placed with devotion. My own science fair ribbon, a narrow blue strip, lay folded on the corner table. I waited for her to say something, anything, but she only kept wiping fingerprints from Serena's awards. "Mom," I finally murmured, "can we frame this one?" She looked over as if noticing the ribbon for the first time. "Isolde, darling, focus on skills that matter. Leave the achievements to your sister." The ribbon disappeared that evening. No one mentioned it. Another time, I asked my father whether I should apply for an engineering internship. Serena had already secured one through his connections. He tapped Serena's shoulder and said, "You, my star, will go far. Some minds are built for impact." Then he turned to me. "You are steady, Izzy, reliable. Families need that too. Reliable." A consolation prize disguised as praise. Even Serena absorbed the family script. When teachers complimented me, she would laugh lightly and say, "Izzy is just good at supporting roles." But the only person who didn't speak to me that way was Arthur. My grandfather watched me think before I spoke, and he treated that pause like it mattered. Once, when Serena boasted about another award, Arthur sat beside me on the porch and said, "Being overlooked teaches you to see what others cannot. That is not a weakness, Isolde. It is preparation." I believed him then, and as I walked away from my family after the will reading, I felt that belief rise again, steady and quiet, exactly the way he had planted it. After I left the lake house, I drove without turning on the radio. Silence had always been easier than pretending to belong in a room where every word I spoke landed like an inconvenience. But when I thought of Arthur, the quiet felt different, steadier, almost like a place I could stand. I remembered the last autumn we spent together at the lake. Serena had just won another academic award, and my parents filled the house with congratulations, guests, and the smug glow of certainty. I slipped outside to sit on the porch steps, hoping the cold air would wash the noise off me. Arthur joined me without asking. His knees cracked as he lowered himself beside me. "You look tired, Isolde," he said gently. "I am fine," I answered out of habit. "No," he said. "You are practiced." I held my breath, unsure how he always saw through me so easily. Inside, my mother's laughter carried through the open window. Arthur angled his head toward the sound. "Your parents forget that recognition is not the same as worth." I stared down at my hands. "Serena achieves more. Serena performs," he corrected. "You observe, you calculate, you understand the gaps between what people say and what they do." I shook my head. "That is not something anyone values." Arthur chuckled softly. "Only because they do not know its power yet." Then he lifted the carved fishing rod he always saved for me and placed it between us. "People rush toward the brightest surface," he said. "You look underneath. That is where truth lives." I did not fully understand him then, but walking away from the will reading, the envelope in my coat pressing against my ribs, I felt the echo of his words settle into something sharper, something prepared. Arthur had left me more than a key. He had left me the expectation that I would use it. When I returned to the lake house later that afternoon, I could hear my parents before I saw them. Their voices carried through the hallway sharp, businesslike, the way they spoke when they believed they were shaping the future. Jonathan stood in Arthur's study, papers spread across the desk as if the man had not been gone for only a few days. Lucille hovered beside him, flipping through folders with almost clinical detachment. "We will reorganize the Foundation's advisory board," Jonathan said. "Serena should lead the mentorship division. It aligns with Arthur's intentions." Lucille nodded without looking up. "Once we liquidate the secondary assets, Everything will balance. The lake house alone could free several $100,000. I stepped into the doorway. You are already discussing his assets. Jonathan turned, mildly annoyed, as if I had interrupted a meeting I had no clearance for. This is not about emotion. Isolde, your grandfather left responsibilities behind. We are simply handling them. Handling. I repeated quietly. Serena entered then, holding a mug she never drank from. She offered me a small smile. This has been overwhelming for all of us. I did not expect the trust to be that large. Her attempt at sympathy slid off me. You seem to be adjusting quickly. A flush rose on her cheeks. I am only trying to help. Lucille finally looked up. Your sister will take on most of the foundation work. She has the temperament for leadership. I took a slow breath. And what exactly do you expect from me? Jonathan exchanged a glance with Lucille. Nothing immediate, he said. You have always been steady supportive. Not everyone is meant to lead. There it was again. The boundary they had built for me since childhood. Lucille tapped the remaining pile on the desk and envelope, the one that held my $1, and the brass key I had taken. She paused long enough to make the moment sting. Isolde, she said softly, build your own legacy. We cannot build one for you. A dismissal clothed as wisdom. Serena shifted uneasily, sensing something tightening between us. Jonathan pretended to return to the documents, avoiding my eyes altogether. I felt Arthur's words rise inside me, not loud, not triumphant, just clear. My family was not overlooking me. They were erasing me, and they believed I would let them. I turned from the doorway, the weight of the envelope in my coat pocket no longer a burden but a direction. I drove until the lake house disappeared from my mirrors, until my parents' voices no longer echoed in my head. When the small inn near the ridge came into view, the lights glowing soft against the evening, I felt something inside me loosen. Rita Calderon, the owner, recognized me the second I stepped inside. You are Arthur's granddaughter, she said gently. You look like him when you are thinking too hard. I forced a nod. I just need a quiet room. She handed me a key without hesitation. Take number 3. It is where he stayed on nights he needed to clear his mind. Her words settled over me, warm and heavy. I thanked her and went upstairs. Inside the room, I sat at the small desk and pulled out the envelope Arthur had left me. The seal cracked with a soft sigh, as though the paper had been waiting for air. A brass key fell into my palm, then a folded sheet. On it, in Arthur's careful handwriting, was a list of dates paired with amounts $9,870, $11,290, $14,320, repeated across several months. Beneath the list was one line begin where the truth first bent. I read it twice, then again. The pattern was familiar. Grant dispersals from the foundation. Amounts small enough to avoid attention, large enough to shift totals in ways most people would never question. Arthur had shown me this once, years ago. He talked about how money carried intention the way water carried current. If you watched closely, you could see when someone nudged the flow. I opened my laptop and typed the amounts into a spreadsheet. I matched dates to the foundation's public filings, cross-referenced advisory fees, and pulled up the consultancy names attached to each movement. One name repeated Crane Strategic Advisory, my father's creation, his signature woven through transactions quiet enough to pass under every radar but one. A sharp knock jolted me. Rita's voice came through the door. I heard someone come in downstairs. Everything all right? Yes, I said quickly. Just working. She paused. Your grandfather trusted you more than you know. When her footsteps faded, I looked back at the sheet. Arthur had not left me a puzzle. He had left me a map. The numbers lined up cleanly, unmistakably. Someone had bent the truth first, then bent it again, until it curved around them like a shield. The brass key in my hand felt heavier now, not symbolic at all, but deliberate. Arthur wanted me to open something, and he trusted I would know when. I barely slept. The numbers kept moving in my mind, aligning and realigning, like they were trying to speak. By morning, the room felt smaller, as if the truth itself was pressing against the walls, insisting I follow it. I opened my notebook and began tracing each transaction again. Dates, amounts, advisory fees. Cross-checked with grant disbursements from the Crane Foundation's public filings. The pattern strengthened small diversions, structured increments, each routed through Crane Strategic Advisory. My father's fingerprints, quiet but unmistakable. As I typed, I heard Arthur's voice as clearly as if he were standing behind me. Watch the current, Isolde. It will always tell you who is steering the boat. By mid-morning, my spreadsheet filled half the screen. The other half displayed archived documents I remembered from the year I had worked part-time in the Foundation's admin office at Arthur's insistence. Back then, I assumed he only wanted me to earn pocket money. Now I could see he had been teaching me a language one my family never bothered to learn. A knock startled me. Rita peeked inside. I brought tea. You look like someone solving a crime. I gave a tired smile. Just untangling things. Her eyes softened. Arthur used to sit in this room when something weighed on his mind. He said this place reminded him that clarity needs quiet. Quiet is all I have right now. She set the cup down and left without pressing further. I returned to the work. When numbers repeated, I boxed them in red. When a memo's signature line matched an advisory payment, I circled it. I marked each inconsistency until the page looked like a battlefield. Not of chaos, of precision. Hours passed. The pattern became undeniable. My parents had diverted foundation funds for years, always just under thresholds that would trigger a formal review. Their scheme relied on one assumption that no one beneath them would ever look closely enough to see the bend. I leaned back, rubbing my eyes. The brass key rested beside my notebook. Its teeth glinted under the dim light, as if urging me forward. A memory surfaced Arthur locking the cabinet in his study before heading out to the dock. His hand always lingered on the drawer, almost protective. I had filed the gesture away without understanding it. Now I did. That cabinet was the next step. Whatever Arthur hid there, he meant for me to open. I packed my notebook, my laptop, and the folded letter into my bag. The decision was already made. I would return to the lake house not as the daughter they dismissed, but as the only person Arthur had trusted to finish what he started. The truth was waiting, and I was done pretending not to see it. I waited until dusk before driving back to the lake house. My parents' cars were gone, and Serena's bright scarf no longer hung by the door. For the first time in days, the house sat still, not peaceful, just unoccupied by the noise that usually drowned everything out. Inside, the air held a thin echo of their presence. Papers shifted by hurried hands, drawers left slightly ajar. I walked straight to Arthur's study. The brass key trembled slightly between my fingers as I fitted it into the lower cabinet. The lock clicked open with a quiet, final sound. Inside were neat stacks of binders labeled by year, a small recorder, printed emails annotated in Arthur's handwriting, and another sealed envelope with my name on it, Isolde Crane only. Before touching it, I opened the nearest binder. Pages of grant ledgers, advisory invoices, and handwritten notes filled the folders. Arthur had marked the same anomalies I had found: rounded numbers, suspicious increments, repeated vendor names. My father's consultancy appeared again and again. I whispered, "You knew." A voice behind me answered, knew what I spun around. Serena stood in the doorway, clutching her mug the way she always did when she felt uncertain. "Izzy, why are you here?" I steadied my breath. I needed to see what Arthur kept locked away. She stepped farther in, eyes scanning the open cabinet. Dad said he was reorganizing things. He said Grandpa left everything a mess. Arthur did not leave anything a mess. I replied. He left evidence. Serena's eyebrows pulled together. Evidence of what, of where the foundation's money went, of who diverted it. She blinked, shaking her head. No, Dad would never misuse the foundation. He said he only advised Grandpa. I slid a marked ledger toward her. Look at the dates, the amounts. They match the payments from Crane Strategic Advisory. Her voice softened into fear. He told me those were standard fees. Standard fees do not hide under review thresholds, I said quietly. She sank into Arthur's old chair. I never wanted any of this. I just did what they told me. I know. Her gaze lifted to mine, shimmering. Izzy, are you going to ruin them? I am not here to ruin anyone, I said. I am here because Arthur trusted me to see what they counted on everyone else ignoring. She covered her face with her hands. Mom said you would not understand any of this. That is the point. Serena, they never believed I could. I reached into the cabinet and picked up the second envelope. My name, Arthur's handwriting, steady and certain. Serena watched me. What if opening that changes everything it already has? I answered. I broke the seal. Inside was a single page. If you are reading this, they have taken too much for too long. You are the successor trustee of the Crane Foundation. 56% voting control belongs to you. Use it only for truth. Arthur. My throat tightened. Serena stared at me as though seeing me for the first time. Izzy, what are you going to do? I folded the letter. Finish what he started. Before either of us spoke again, headlights swept across the window, my parents returning. I closed the cabinet, locked it, and slipped the key into my pocket. The truth was no longer hidden. It was in motion. My parents walked into the lake house the next morning, dressed as if they expected cameras, not consequences. Jonathan adjusted his tie. Lucille smoothed her collar. Serena hovered near the window, still pale from the night before. I stood beside Arthur's study door. The letter folded inside my pocket like a pulse. A firm knock sounded. Jonathan straightened. That will be the appraiser. We need to settle property valuations quickly. But when the door opened, it was Dr. Marcus Bellamy. He stepped inside holding a folder and a small tablet, nodding first to me, then briefly to the others. Lucille's smile fractured. Marcus, is this necessary? He did not answer her. We will begin now. Jonathan bristled. Begin what we already had the will reading. Marcus set the tablet on the table and pressed play. Arthur's voice filled the room steady, familiar, stripped of all softness. If this message is being heard, it means certain conditions have been met. Some of those closest to me have not acted with integrity. Lucille stepped forward. This is taken out of context. Marcus raised a hand. No interruptions. The next clip appeared on the screen footage from the study camera. My parents rummaging through Arthur's cabinets, discussing assets as if they were inventory, their voices clear, unguarded. Jonathan paled. Where did you get that it was Arthur's? Marcus replied. Installed 2 years ago for security purposes. Lucille shook her head, trying to steady herself. We were simply organizing. You cannot use another clip interrupted her records of financial inconsistencies. Advisory payments routed through Crane Strategic Advisory. The same amounts I had mapped in red boxes hours earlier. Jonathan slammed his hand on the table. This is misinterpretation. Old paperwork. There is no proof of wrongdoing. Arthur's voice returned. If my estate is contested, all disputed assets transfer in full to the Crane Foundation. I will not allow the work of decades to be eroded by entitlement. Serena let out a soft, broken breath. Marcus opened the folder. These are the final directives. Jonathan and Lucille retain only the personal property assigned to them. Serena retains her trust of $950,000. The controlling interest of the Crane Foundation, 56% transfers to Isolde Crane. The silence that followed was not shock. It was recognition. Lucille's lips quivered. Isolde, you do not understand how these matters work. I stepped forward. Numbers are simpler than people. I understand them just fine. Jonathan's voice cracked for the first time. We are your parents, and Arthur trusted me. I said, he trusted I would protect what you bent. No one moved. Even the house felt as if it were holding its breath. Marcus closed the folder. All that remains is acknowledgement. I nodded once. The power dynamic shifted with that single motion, quiet, irreversible. After Marcus left, the house stayed unnervingly still. My parents sat frozen at the table as if movement itself might confirm their loss. Serena lingered near the hallway, hands twisting the sleeve of her sweater. She approached me first. Izzy. I did not know about any of this. Her voice wavered. I believed what they told me, that you did not want responsibility, that you were comfortable staying in the background. I looked at her. You believed it because it benefited you. She winced, but did not deny it. I am sorry. I should have asked more questions. You were never encouraged to. I replied. None of us were. She hesitated. Are you going to cut me out? I am drawing boundaries, I said softly. Forgiveness does not mean access. A tear slipped down her cheek. I do not want to lose you. You will not. I told her, but you will not stand in front of me anymore. Behind her, Jonathan stood abruptly. His chair scraped the floor. You cannot dismantle this family over misunderstandings. I met his eyes. I am not dismantling anything. I am refusing to disappear again. Lucille's voice cracked. We were protecting Serena's future and erasing mine. I said. For the first time, neither of them had an answer. I stepped back, letting the silence settle on all of us not as punishment, but as truth. Neither of them could bend anymore. After my parents left the lake house, the quiet they once used to diminish me finally belonged to me instead. I walked down to the dock with Arthur's carved fishing rod in hand, the wood worn smooth where his fingers had rested. The lake lay muted, the surface steady enough to hold a reflection without judgment. I sat at the edge, letting my feet hover above the water. Serena joined me a moment later, stopping a few steps behind as if unsure of her place. Isolde, she said softly. What happens now? I turned the rod in my hands. The foundation becomes what it should have been, a place for the overlooked, the ones told they do not need much. She nodded slowly. And us, you and I, will find something new. I answered, but it will not look like what came before. Serena swallowed. I can accept that. We stayed in tentative silence until she whispered, Grandpa always knew you would lead. He taught me how. I said, quietly. When she walked back toward the house, I remained on the dock, laying the carved rod across the boards. Not as an ending, just as a return. I pulled out Arthur's letter once more and read his final line. Use it only for truth. I felt the words settle into me, not as a burden, but as direction. I stood, breathing in the cold air. The still water initiative. I murmured. The name fit. Truth beneath the surface. Before leaving the dock, I faced the lake. If this story stays with you, I said into the open air, share where you are listening from. Stories find strength when they travel. Then I walked back toward the house, ready for the work ahead, carrying the kind of quiet that finally felt earned,